Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Right, I'll change my approach. I'll start with the first PowerPoint. Food security and nutrition around the world. I'd like to take us to visit what's the situation around the world. Hunger is on the rise, and those facing chronic food deprivation increased from 804 million in 2017 to 821 million in 2018. And that report was taken from the Food Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 2018. Now taking you back to Solomon Islands, we also have food issues. People from the low-lying atolls are facing serious staple food shortage, and that was based on the Solomon Star, that's the Solomon Islands newspaper, 2018. And according to World Fish report, by 2030, human consumption will deplete fish stock in Solomon Islands. Now, with those problems that I have stated, I'd like us to see some of the contributing factors. And there could be many factors, but the ones that I have here are four. First, population increase, putting pressure on land and sea resources. Currently in Solomon Islands, we are moving up to 600,000. That's our population. Number two, unsustainable development activities going on in the country, such as logging. Thirdly, effects of climate change. And the fourth one is natural disasters, such as a flood, as well as cyclones. Now, our problem in the Solomon Islands would be food security. There I'd like us to see the definition of the word food security. And it's about availability at all times of adequate food supplies. It's also ensuring that all people at all times have both physical and economic access to the basic food that they need. And also it's about access of all people at all times to enough food for an active, healthy life. Now, with the problems of food security, this work suggests ways forward. And the first one is self-reliance and self-sufficiency should be a concept that Solomon Islanders should adopt. And also using indigenous food preservation methods to ensure food is accessed at all times. Ladies and gentlemen, the title of my presentation is Improving Food Security Through Preservation, the study of the indigenous methods of preservation or preserving Ngali Nuts in Rannogga, Solomon Islands. Right, that is the map of Solomon Islands, and I have marked there the location where my study was conducted. I marked it in the orange there. By the way, I'd like to give you some background information of the study location. Right, Rannogga, after the 2007 earthquake and tsunami, they experienced the coastline has been raised, or the island has been raised. Well, other islands in the Pacific experience sea level rise. Rannogga has experienced the island has been raised. And so you can see there, where used to be a coral reef, now it's up in a dry land. Also, I'd like us to see food practices in that place or in that location. Animal source of protein is reserved for special occasions such as birthday, marriage, bride price, and so forth. Fish is difficult to obtain. People rely mainly on plant source of food, and that provides their daily food supply. So with that practice they have, this work suggests that Ngali Nuts should be a substitute for animal protein. Ngali nut preservation methods have been developed thousands of years and passed on from generation to generation in Rannogga, Solomon Islands. When in season, it is the job of women and girls to gather the nuts and to prepare them for preservation and storage. Ngali nut is a source of protein for the people, and preservation ensures the nut is available throughout the year. Right, these are some of the findings. Right, Ngali nut is a native to Melanesian islands of Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. In PNG, it is called galip nut. In Vanuatu, it is called nangai, and in Solomon Islands, we call it ngali nut. The tree can reach up to 30 meters in height. The lifespan of the ngali nut is 100 years. It bears the nut for 6 to 8 months before it is ready to be harvested. The fruit turns from green to blackish blue when maturing, and it is organically grown by families generations back. Okay, so that is the nutritional information. High in protein, vitamins, and minerals, high in healthy oils or fats. Okay, it is an antioxidation, it has antioxidation properties, and it has anti-inflammatory properties. Okay, and the preservation process has it has to go through processes, many processes. The first one is, when the nut is ready, women and girls go and pick the nuts. Then the next process is shelling of the ngali nuts, and they have the indigenous tools there, stones, yeah? They use stones. And again, it's the work of the girls and women, and also sometimes children help their mothers and aunties to do the work. Okay, so there we have the kennel. It is the kennel that we preserve, or the Rannogga people preserve. Ngali nut kennels are placed over hot stones. That's the process of baking. And when it is ready to be covered with leaves, they add more stones to it, and then they cover the ngali nuts and let it bake for 1.5 to 2 hours. Now the next step is packaging and storage. Right, traditionally ngali nuts are wrapped in dry leaves and placed above the fireplace, and that is marked there with a red marker there. So that's where indigenous people of Rannogga used to store their nuts. Now the shelf life of the preserved nut, with the traditional method of storage, the shelf life of the nut is about 6 to 8 months. So they can store it for 6 to 8 months, or even up to a year. So it's like they can store it until the next season. Nowadays, the people of Rannogga also come up with some kind of improvised methods of storage, or storing ngali nuts or baked ngali nuts. So they use empty biscuit buckets, empty milk tins, and even plastic bags. However, the shelf life of the improvised methods of storage is quite medium term. Yeah? It's not long compared to the indigenous way of storing it above the fireplace. Right, and When asking about the reasons for preserving Ngali nuts, it seems that Rannogga people have their own indigenous knowledge about why they should preserve Ngali nuts, and those are some of the reasons why they preserve Ngali nuts. The first one says it's the only way to keep large harvests that would not be used at once. Secondly, in order to have continuous supply of the nuts when it is out of season for 6 to 8 months, they have to preserve it. And also, in terms of conveniences, they can still hold on to the nuts for use in terms of preparing food for special occasions and ceremonies. Next, it's a major source of protein. And lastly, food that Ngali nut is seen as a food that provided social, physical, and economic security to the people, because they can use a Ngali nut to pay for land. Also, they can use Ngali nut to pay compensation or pay for, use it as a form of exchange for bride price. Now, what are some of the lessons that we can learn from the Rannogga people? Ngali nut trees are organically grown and preserved, therefore they are safe for human consumption. Also, Ngali nut is an important source of protein for the people of Rannogga, and today Solomon Islanders also are interested in the product. Secondly, indigenous food preservation methods still very effective in the traditional Solomon Island society and need to be promoted. And that is when we try to address the problem of food security. Self-reliance and self-sufficiency through the use of indigenous skills and knowledge are important concepts. And we must not wait for food aid because it is not sustainable and safe at all times. So we have to learn to preserve our food using the indigenous way. Also, the lesson we learn here is that dried Ngali nuts can be used for many months without preservatives or preservatives added to the food. Also, in terms of environment, we can say that the processes that are being used are environment friendly. They use leaves, and those leaves can be taken from the main plant, and the plant can grow the leaves again, provided they don't cut the whole plant. Secondly, empty tins as well as empty biscuit buckets are being used for storing baked Ngali nuts. Therefore, we are recycling, reuse, and also we reduce problem of generating rubbish. Also, we can learn that Ngali nut preservation methods as well as the preserved Ngali nuts provide economic benefits to the people, especially children and women. They can participate in economic activity through selling of preserved Ngali nuts, which is also high in demand for local and overseas market today. And with that one, they can have money to buy other foods. Also, Ngali nut preservation method, Ngali nut preservation method strengthen family relationship. Families work together throughout the preservation method or processes. Children help their mothers. Therefore, there is continuity of knowledge and skills through this process of participation. Right, there is a recommendation for Solomon Island to think about. SI need to start integrating indigenous knowledge and skills on food preservation in the courses offered, relevant courses. Secondly, Ministry of Health and Medical Services to promote the use of organic Ngali nuts as food in substitute for animal protein due to rising cases of non-communicable diseases. And Ministry of Agriculture to support local Ngali nut owners on how to grow and maintain their trees for better harvest, processing, and marketing the product. Conclusion. Indigenous ways of knowing and survival are still important as Pacific Island countries are facing challenges posed by climate change. Food security is a concern. Indigenous people of Solomon Islands must have access to safe and nutritious food only through preserving organic food. Self-reliance through preserving on local food is the essence of food security. Grow food trees that provide sustainable supply. And an example is Ngali Nuts, which has a lifespan of 100 years. And we can say that Ngali Nuts is a sustainable food tree. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Grace. We have enough time for 2 or 3 questions. So if anyone has